Doing, glad you're here. Well, good morning, everyone. So we're here this morning to celebrate the life of a dear friend of ours, Guy Reid. And thank you for coming out for this celebration. It's so unfortunate we're going through these difficult times that we are, because if this had been a normal time, this auditorium would be filled up with people that loved Guy. And if just half the people that Guy helped feed would show up, this auditorium wouldn't be able to keep all of them. I don't think, thinking of Guy, I don't think I have met anyone that best exemplified the life of Christ as much as Guy did. Just a humble, sweet, kind, smart person that did what he could to make life better for people around him. And I think that's what we're all called to do. Like I said, I know there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of families that were able to feed their kids, that were able to let the fear of not being able to feed their kids go because of the work that Guy did. And I know there are probably thousands of kids that were not able to, didn't have to live in a household of stress and strain because Guy collected food and helped deliver it to them. So he is a remarkable soul, and I'm very, very glad that I had the opportunity to meet him. His family is watching online, so we're glad that you're doing that. And so to start our service today, let's do affirmative prayer. For you who may have not heard of affirmative prayer, it's just praying as Jesus did, praying in the affirmative. So join with me now to know something good for ourselves. That right here, right as we are, flows all the power and love of Spirit. And this morning, we're all so grateful that we had this wonderful example in our lives of how to live and to make the world a better place just for having been in it, and to do it with kindness and compassion and smarts, and to do it without seeking lots of attention, just being a decent human being, helping out those around him. So Guy Reid was a wonderful example for all of us. We're grateful that he was in our lives, and we know he now is sustained by the Spirit of God. We know that he is as alive as he ever was. We know that he is continuing on to do the good work that he did here on earth. He'll be able to do it even in greater ways. We know he is alive with Spirit's love and joy, and that he is making even greater stuff happen now that he rests gently and easily in the loving arms of God. This is our truth. We celebrate this right knowing, and we release this prayer into the mind of God. Do us good and perfect, bold and dynamic work, returning to us multiplied abundantly. And together we say, and so it is. Well, I wanted to share a poem with you that reminds me a lot of Guy. It's called Little Butterfly. Today, a little butterfly flew by me. I thought to myself, where have you been, little butterfly? You came into this world as a cocoon, all by yourself, and blossomed into this beautiful butterfly to fly off to see the world. What you didn't realize, little butterfly, as you fluttered through your days, is how you touched those around you in your soft, gentle ways. You didn't even realize the wonder and awe you created around you. She fluttered her wings towards me as if waving goodbye as she headed towards the horizon. She looked very happy and content as she went on her way, as if to say, "Don't worry, I'll be okay." I was sad to see her go, for she had touched my heart in such a way that I knew life would never be the same. She had left an imprint of all the beauty life has to offer. So I know each time I look at another butterfly horizon, I will remember our moment in time when it was only her and I knew I would be a better person, all because this butterfly flew by me one bright sunny day. I think we can all be grateful that Guy Reid came into our lives one bright and sunny day. So now I'd like to bring up to the stage the wonderful and amazing Reverend Lee Weaver.
Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. Were it not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way where I am going. And if I go, I will come again and take you with me. And Thomas, we call him Doubting Thomas. It's not really fair to call him that because he was as strong, as vital a support person for Jesus and as any of the disciples, except for this one time when he wasn't with the other 10. Judas had already killed himself, and the 10 disciples were in a room, and Jesus appears to them, and Thomas wasn't there. And when they told him about it, he, in other words, said, well, I think I doubt that. So we call him Doubting Thomas. And Jesus went on to say, when he says, I will come again and take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also, and you know where I am going. And Thomas said, no, we do not know the way. And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me, or but through me. Nan and I together met Guy about 8 or 9 years ago. We went to the Unitarian Universalist Church, and Guy was greeting people that day, and he greeted us. Now, all of you must have gone to a church service somewhere where there were official greeters. You know what I mean? How do you do? It's nice that you're here. Come right in. Guy just let us feel what that community was about. He put his arms around us physically and figuratively and just embraced us and brought us in. And it wasn't long after that when that community elected Guy Reid to be the president of the Universalist Unitarian Association. And he did, I believe, a remarkable job with innovations and with strategies and with concepts and beliefs and arts and all of that. He was just a remarkable person in that regard. And he and I became friends. We went to breakfast many times. We used to go to the Metro Diner, and we would just talk, and I guess we would philosophize a bit. And I came to know him through that meeting over breakfast with him. And he gave me a picture, and I've brought it with me this morning. It's one of his paintings. And I'll get it down here closer on the music stand. You can admire it. And I asked him, well, what does it mean? There's this beautiful, slender woman standing there, and she's overlooking, he said, the Hudson River. Okay. And there's a woods over there with trees in it. And I said, what does it mean? What's it about? He said, I don't know. I just painted it, And I loved that approach to his understanding of art and what it was. I don't know. I just do it. It's up to the watcher or the listener to determine what its meaning is. And so I'll have it. You can see it after. I would tell you of one other thing that he did. It was so remarkable. I'm an actor. I guess a lot of you know that. Ken introduced me as the Reverend Lee Weaver. That's true, and I don't talk about that at all because I don't want people to confuse my work on the stage with my work on the chancel. You know, a lot of folks would say, "Oh, you're just acting anyway when you're up there," and I don't want to convey that. But he he came to me one Sunday after the service here. He knew that we were struggling. With the pandemic, we went from doing 3 shows a month around the country, literally. We were doing 8 states a year to doing nothing for a year and a half and over breakfast. About a year, 6 months ago now, I guess, at the diner, I told him when he asked, well, how are you making ends meet? And I said, well, it's a struggle, but we'll get through this, okay. And one Sunday, after church here, guy came up to me and stuffed something in my coat pocket. And I kept talking to whoever I was talking to, and he wandered away, and he went out. He was on his way to his car, his new car. Do y'all see his new car? Yeah. I took it out, and there was a check for money to make things a little bit easier for Nan and myself. And when I saw it, no, you can't do that. And I walked out to the parking lot where he was just about to get in, and I tore up the check. And I said, you can't do that. He took out his checkbook, and he wrote another one right there. He said, we can do this all day. I've got an entire checkbook. And so I said, thank you. And that's how kind, that's how generous, how much his friendship meant to me. Nan and I met his partner, Ben, many years ago when we dined with them on Thanksgiving Day at their house. I think it was on Arrowhead before they moved to the last place. And there was another person there. It was Ben and Guy and Nan and myself and another person, an Asian woman. And I don't know her name. I don't remember her story, but I just know it was somebody who didn't have a place to go on Thanksgiving. And so she was invited there. He was a wonderful caregiver, I know, to Ben. For 40 years, they were together. What we talked about so often when we were together was what it means to be, well, to be a Christian. And I told him, I'm not sure I consider myself a Christian anymore. And we talked about the difference between being a Christian, which means you're signed up and you're in a church and you follow these precepts and so forth. The difference between that and being Christ-like. And we agreed. I remember him saying, I know a lot of Christ-like people at the Unitarian Church. And that was what was behind a little scene in my play called The Attic. And one of my characters is giving a talk at the Unitarian Church. And she says, pointing out the difference between Christian and Christ-like. She said, of the 7 most Christ-like people I know, 3 are Jewish, 3 are atheists, and 1, I put it in when I do it, and 1 is a CSL person. It's Guy Reid. He was a Christ-like person in my life. He was never after anything for himself, but he was so anxious to help other people, to give to people, to forgive people, to be sensitive, to be all that we believe it is to be Christ-like. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That was Guy. That was his way. That's what he did. It's what he said. It's what he bought. It's what he gave. It was all of his actions. The way, the truth. He believed in the words, but he didn't claim to be a Christian any more than I do any more now, but rather in an effort to act Christ-like. And he and I talked about how so many of the most Christ-like people are atheists and Jewish and Buddhists and Some of you know the song that Eddie Watkins does here. Doesn't matter if you're black or white, gay or straight, Christian, Buddhist, or Jew. And that was Ken's favorite of Eddie's music. And it happens to be mine too. I know you're here because you knew Guy, and so you know what I'm talking about. And if there is a heaven, and I don't know that there is, nor did Guy. That was one of our agreements. We wondered, what about that? Maybe this is just heaven on earth right here. And he and I agreed that it was. It can be. And the way to get there was to be a practitioner of the way, a believer in the same truths, and a willingness to give your life all you can, whether it's time or service or financial or encouragement, to give all you can with your life. Guy Reid did that. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Lee. Most of us who come here know that how big a part Guy was with our support of the food pantry here. Every week, day in, week out, Guy would haul sometimes a huge amount of food down to the food pantry. The last time I talked to Guy, that was his concern. He wanted to know how we were getting the food down, and actually he didn't want anybody to take the food down. He wanted to take it down himself. And as I said, there have been many families who were able to live better because of Guy Reid. And so now we have the head of the St. John's Ecumenical Council is going to come up, Dr. Richard Knoll, and tell us a little bit about Guy's work there and Guy as a person. Come on up, Dr. Richard.
Thank you, Ken. People who've been around St. Augustine for a while know the last person you want to follow is Lee Weaver. I can't say that I knew Guy as well as Lee does. I knew him through the pantry, primarily. I came to the food pantry. I got involved in it about, probably 8 years ago. After a while, I found myself on the board, and it's there that I met Guy at board meeting. I met this fellow who was soft-spoken, a wry sense of humor, didn't talk a lot in meetings, but when he did, he had something to say. Not that he was shy to give his opinion, and he certainly did express what he thought about things and what we were doing. But it was obvious that he cared about our mission. Before the pandemic, we had a structure such that the different churches that support the Ecumenical Food Pantry were each responsible for an afternoon or two every month. And Guy worked with the Unitarian Universalist team. I understood before I came on the scene, but at the time that I met him, he was the board member representing the Center for Spiritual Living, and he had formed a team to serve at the pantry, and he headed that team. Before the pandemic, what we would do, the way we served our clients was that they would drive or walk up to the pantry, and they would come in, sit in our waiting room, and then they would be ushered into the office where the person who was in charge of that aspect of giving them the food would be sitting at the computer and would ask them their names if they didn't recognize them, if they weren't a regular client or whatever, and they would check in the computer to see when they had been served last, because we had restrictions on how often they could come to get food. Then people who were in the back would pack the bags of food and bring them out, depending upon the size of the family and provide the food for the people, and it would be all recorded in the computer. Guy liked to do that role. He liked to be in there, not because he was overly fond of computers, but because he wanted the direct contact with the clients. He wanted to meet them face to face and to deal with them and to provide for their needs. Then the pandemic hit. The pantry closed for a brief time, and then we had a group of people that came and said, you know, as long as we make certain provisions in the light of the pandemic, we're willing to work an afternoon a week. And when that happened, it was sort of like, it sort of took off, and some other people came and said, no, we'll also work an afternoon a week. And so right now, we're open 5 days a week, just as we were before the pandemic. But we don't have specific churches and necessarily in charge of a specific afternoon, although that certainly most of some teams are from a particular church that organize. Even before the pandemic, because some of the members of Guy's team could no longer work with the team, he wasn't able to put together a regular afternoon a month from CSL for CSL to be in charge of. And so he went back and joined the Unitarian Universalist team and volunteered with them because he didn't want to lose his contact with the pantry. And of course, during this whole time, as Ken said, he continued to bring food from your fellowship and all the time bringing food to the pantry. So he continued his work with the pantry had continued up to the end until his passing. Probably, everybody, I would say, at the pantry, all the board members and all the people who had contacted with there, Guy was not the most open and flaunting person in terms. He was the type of person that would prefer to work behind the scenes quietly as long as things were getting done. And he wanted to serve people, and he wanted to feed the hungry. And we're very thankful that he was able to do what he was able to do for our pantry. And certainly without people like him, we couldn't exist. And his passing leaves a hole, and we will miss him very much. Thank you.
He was kind of an understated person greatly, except in two areas. He wore very flashy socks, and he had jewelry that would make Liberace envious of. But he was quiet, but when he said something, it was wise. And I never heard him say a negative word about anybody. I don't ever remember that. Is Barbara? He liked the socks, yes. So I was with Guy for a long time. Guy would come in every week. We had a team of people that would do prayer work for our center and nation, and Guy was a part of that, and we probably met for several years. So I was worried when I first kind of noticed that he wasn't kind of as on top of his game as he had been. And a wonderful friend of his reached out to us and asked us to keep an eye on him, and we did. And so now to speak last, she's coming up to share with us a little bit more about personal Guy and what he was like. So Doreen, if you'd please come up.
Thank you for inviting me. This is really a pleasure. He loved his family here. He loved Lee. Nan spoke about you all the time. Guy and I have been friends for, I think it was 1991 we met, ironically enough, for Meals for Wheels. We got paired at Thanksgiving in 1991 to deliver meals down in Lincolnville. And he was quite the character, as you well know. I mean, you have already you have said everything that I would say about the man. I have seen him twice a week now for 20-something years. But when we went, that's when we became friends. He loves his cars, as you know. He had a convertible, LeBaron convertible back then. And it was such a lovely day. He says, why don't we put down the top and we'll deliver our meals in the convertible? Well, we had the best time. We went to all the Lincolnville area. That was our designation. And then we went out for lunch. And ever since then, we've been lunch partners. We've been reading partners. We had a little thing going between us where he would order 4 or 5 magazines, and I would order 4 or 5 different magazines, and then we'd swap them out. And we'd always, he'd always be bringing me books. We shared that love. And as a matter of fact, he wrote a book. I'm not sure if you're aware. He published a book. It's called Birthright, and it was very interesting, very much about his roots when he lived up in Carolinas and way back when type times. There were still slaves involved in the book. And it was just lovely, and lovely man. He, same as you, he had given me a couple of different pictures. I mean, he loved to paint. He loved to write poetry. He was just a lovely, lovely man. And it was so funny because my husband used to say, he's like your second husband, because every time we wanted to go to like art museums or cultural events that my husband had no interest in, he'd be like, why don't you call Guy? I bet Guy would go with you. And sure enough, he would. And like you said, he was so dedicated to Ben and, always kept a lovely house. And his socks, world renowned. I don't know if anybody's seen, but his closet, his shoes, he probably has almost as many shoes as he has socks. And always impeccably dressed. And yeah, he just was a class act all the way around. And I'm sorry he's passed, but I'll tell you, he's going to be happy reuniting with Ben because he just really wasn't the same afterwards. And, all I can say is I just dearly love the man and always will. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. In honor of Guy, we'd like to give you a little check for a contribution, if
Thank you.
would. Thanks.
Thank you. Take the mask off. So, final poem, and then we'll do a closing affirmative prayer. I give you this one thought to keep. I am with you still. I do not sleep. I'm 1,000 winds that blow. I'm the diamond glitz on the snow. I'm the sunlight on ripened grain. I'm the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I'm the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not think of me as gone. I am with you still in each new dawn. And so we believe that when we talk about death here, we don't talk about death, we talk about transitions. That we transition from life to spirit, and in spirit we feel more alive than we actually do here, because we freed ourselves from this cloak of dust that weighs down a vibration. So Guy feels more alive than he's ever felt. He feels freer, and he is off on a wonderful new adventure with his beloved Ben. And he's not going to forget any of us. He's with every single one of us as our hopes and inspirations on how to live better, live more joyfully, and how to give more of ourselves, how to make the world a better place for our having been in it. Guy showed us a wonderful, beautiful example of how to make that possible. And it's now our challenge to go out there and to be the best we can be and to bring about as much love and compassion as we can. So if you now will join with me in a closing affirmation. So this is the truth I know. I know that God is love, and I know that it manifests in love through the wonderful people I see around me. And my dear friend Guy has shown me a wonderful example of how I can move out into the world and bring goodness and compassion and kindness, how I can live the truth of myself, how I can be a loyal partner, a loyal loved one, how I can be an example for others, not loud and boisterous, but quiet and calm and steadfast. Guy had a wonderful, beautiful life. He lived it as an example for all those around him. We're grateful. We're grateful that he has been in our life, and we're grateful that he will remain in our lives. And on that wonderful day when we all transition, we know there will be Guy in some flashy jewelry and flashy socks, hopefully driving a convertible, ready to welcome us home. This is our truth. We celebrate it. We rejoice in it. And together in consciousness we say, and so it is. Have an amazing week. Thank you all for coming out. And just remember, Guy will be with you always. God bless us all.